Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for the final part, I think, of my, sorry, being attacked by the cat, final part of my mission to bomb the industrial centre of Kassel as part of Operation Point Blank in Down in Flames, Wild Blue Yonder. So, as is my habit, I'll give you a quick recap of the tactical situation as it stands at the beginning of this video. So, we're pushing back towards the Channel and the North Sea, leaving Kassel behind us after what was a pretty successful raid in terms of bombing accuracy. But as you can see, my B-17s are in a rather pitiable condition. One of them is very heavily damaged. The others, that one took a cockpit hit, so although its damage is light, it has fallen out of formation and therefore it's very vulnerable. If the Germans leave us alone this turn, I might try getting both of those to do a disengagement to see if they can just get the heck out of there. But we'll have to see how feasible that is. The other three bombers are damaged to varying degrees, not seriously, but two of them have got rather gaping and obvious wounds. We have been joined by an escort. There's a pair of P-47s who have taken over from Zemke and his wingman. They departed the previous turn. And I hope these fellows can stay as long as they can because it's been suspiciously quiet. And of course, as you know, with the Eye of God view, watching the proceedings, the Germans are merely holding back in an effort to try and catch the formation at a moment when the guard is either changing or the last of the available Allied fighters have to turn for home because of fuel limitation. So we'll see whether they've got the timing right. But anyway, moving on with this turn, I just need to shuffle some cards. Right, so looking at my sheet, much to the relief of the Allies, there are still no German aircraft putting in an appearance, so it's going to be a quiet turn. Now, I can't do anything with these two, and I can't look at their hand because they unfortunately are lugging their drop tanks. However, this turn, because they're empty, I'm going to jettison them, because there really is no point hanging on to these any longer. And so they'll just carry on cruising. As for the bombers, I wonder, is it worth trying to get my cripples to disengage? It's a bit of a dangerous thing to do, but it may be worth the risk. I think I am, dear, they're worth 20 points each. Do you know what? I'm going to do it. It's what I would do in a real life situation. I would tell the cripples to try and get out of there. So the really heavily damaged one that's out of formation is going to have a go first. And he draws a full throttle card. So that is not too bad. He's down there on safe escape. There's no enemy fighters present. He is damaged. It's not a fuel disengagement. And he is homebound. And there's 6 or more turns to go, so he goes up another level. But he is a heavy bomber, so it's down 1 level. Well, I'm glad to say he makes a successful escape and manages to break off, albeit in a damaged condition, but I'm not complaining. And that one too, I think he may as well try and do a runner. The rest will stay in formation and stay together for mutual support. It's just the ones who've fallen out of formation that will take the risk. So a half loop, I have a horrible feeling that, that's not too bad. No enemy fighters present, so he's way down there. Yes, this other bomber gets away with it too, thank goodness. It's not looking too horrible. And so I'll close these guys up with what's left of the formation, and we shall see what happens. So we have made the most of that quiet little break we had there. And of course the escort fighters burn more fuel. So the two escorting US fighters are now down to 17 fuel points. With any luck, they should be able to shepherd their charges for a good long while yet. So we get into game turn 3. And now, unfortunately, our good luck does come to an end. Well, sorry, homebound turn 3, I should say, because we are greeted with a pair of BF 109s. Who are not feeling very kindly, it must be said. So I'll just find them. And here they come. They're coming in at high altitude. I'll just get their full throttle counters. And they too have drop tank. Well, the Americans, of course, have just ditched theirs, but these Germans have drop tanks. And I'm also going to draw to see where they come in. Okay, so they've drawn a red bordered card. That's bad news for me because they actually technically arrive at the end of the turn. So in theory, I would have acted, and with no targets there, there's nothing I can do. So the Germans turn up after my attention span has wandered, so to speak, which means they get to have a crack at the bombers if they wish. And that, I think, is exactly what they're going to do because there's points to be had. So the German wingman declares that it would like to go. He draws his hand and would like to go for the heavily damaged bomber. Now, he doesn't have a maneuver card to play, which won't help him out. And in any case, my leader is not having this. Is going to draw him into an attack. So, somewhat annoyed, he... Oh, apologies. As always, the moment they make contact, they will drop their drop tanks, taking advantage of their ability to make a jettison decision. So I'll just record that they've done that. As before, they don't lose very much by it because their drop tanks only contained 5 fuel points anyway. So getting back to where we were, sorry for forgetting that. So the wingman is now forced to attack the P-47 leader, which he decides he will do. He's equally happy knocking an Allied fighter out of the sky. And that's an in my sights with 2 bursts. P-47 will counter with a barrel roll. Now, unfortunately for him, the German aircraft had an ace pilot card and he's more than willing to play it. The P-47 has no ace pilot, so unfortunately he has to take the hit. And that's 3 points of damage. Ouch, that was a nasty opening slap. But never mind, they're still being kept away from the bombers, and that's what matters. So the German leader, looking at his hand, decides he would very much like to attack the same bomber, wants to go for the heavily damaged one, and he's going to go for him head on. This time the P-47 can't preempt him. He can only hope to get in his way. So the German fighter plays a maneuver card to single out that bomber. The P-47 will reactively intervene. Or will he? He's going. Yes, he will, because he's got his full throttle token. So the P-47 full throttles him. Oh, silly me! He could have used that full throttle to preempt him. In fact, that's what he's going to do. Sorry, my bad. I wasn't concentrating as hard as I should have done. Yeah, the P-47 will preempt the German leader by full throttling him, if only to make him burn some of his resources. Now, the German is quite keen to make the attack, so he is going to chance countering it with his full throttle counter. And so that stops the intervention. But the defenders still can redirect the attack. So they're going to put him on instead to that bomber, which just so happens to be the ace crew bomber. So I'll throw in those two counters. Just as a reminder, an ace crew's ability is that they can play any card as a spoiled attack card, which is quite handy in these circumstances. So the German is a bit stymied. He's thrown off his original target. And the bombers will draw a defensive hand of 3 cards. You can tell the formation has been thinned. It's a far cry from the 6-card defensive hand they were getting to shoo off even head-on attacks. But speaking as the Allies, I'm very glad to say they have a super strong defensive hand there. So hopefully it'll be a nasty surprise for the German fighter. His total burst against the bomber in a head-on attack are 2. So he's not going to waste any maneuvering cards. He's going to go straight in for the shooting. So he plays an in my sights 2 hits. The bomber is going to counter with an out of the sun. Hopefully he wasn't expecting that. And he cannot counter it, which is great. Furthermore, just to be mean, they are going to spend one of their ace counters to make it a spoiled attack. So the German attack is ineffective. And in return, the fighter takes 4 hits. That turns the tables just a little bit. So that was a splendid bit of shooing off. Proof that the combat box is a workable concept. And now, of course, the German pilot has a dilemma because he's got a card limit of 5. He's going to get rid of those 2. But he'd really like to hang on to the rest just in case. So he's going to keep those, draw 5th card. Not a very good selection. And that brings us to the end of that turn. So let's mark off what's happening on the fuel logs. It says a lot for the P-47 that although they've had to burn a lot of fuel for being in combat, they've still got 12 fuel points left versus the Bf-109's 7. The P-47, as far as I'm concerned, is an extremely impressive fighter. So, a new turn begins. The US fighters, although they're very glad their colleagues in the bombers have managed to knock the German fighters about a bit, they want to stop them being a threat to them as much as they can. So the wingman and the leader are both going to concentrate on the lame duck in the hope of taking him out this turn. So wingman first. Ooh, and his hand gives him some very... oh, wait, no, I've drawn from the wrong deck. Sorry, Germans, meant to draw from the Allied deck. That's not bad at all. So the wingman's going to go straight in with an in my sights. The German really only has the tight turn card, and he's going to play it because, frankly, he doesn't want to die. And luckily for him, tight turn was the best card he could have played. So he ducks the attack from the wingman. But the downside is he's pretty much helpless in the face of whatever the US leader is going to throw at him. And that punishment is not long in coming. The US leader doesn't have a very big hand, unfortunately, but what he does have he's going to use. So out of the sun for 2 hits is probably just the ticket. And it is. It's exactly what they needed to shoot the German leader down. So that is a significant success for the Allies. The German leader goes down, which leaves his poor wingman hanging. And that poor fellow only gets 6 cards instead of 7 because of the shock of watching his leader go down. So great for the Allies, not so good for the Germans. And with their turbocharged engines, of course, the P-47s will draw 3 cards even at high altitude. That's a reasonably good mix. Some manoeuvring cards would have been nice, but he's still got a powerful punch there. So over to the Germans. Poor fellow. He's in a bit of a pickle, but he's going to do his best to fulfill his primary mission, which is to take down the bombers. The only problem is he's got a bit of a weird selection of cards with which to try and do it. But he's got a lot of defensive cards, so maybe it's worth trying something else. He's going to try for the badly hurt bomber again. He's not going to play a manoeuvring card. He's just going to trust that he's not going to be intercepted or messed with. But if that can't, but without the manoeuvring card, he can't really guarantee what target he's going to end up attacking. He's not going to be intercepted at all by the P-47, so he does have a clear run. The US player will redirect him to the ace crew bomber again, and he's coming in on the broadside, so the US has a defensive hand of 4 this time. And they've not drawn the most powerful defensive selection this time. That's a little unfortunate for them, but we'll see what happens. So the BF-109 has 3 bursts altogether, which is nice because it lets him play that. But does he want to do that just yet? He didn't really think this through because, of course, maybe he should use the weaker one and present the US player with a rather difficult choice. Either you let it through if you want to preserve your ace pilot counter, or you spend your last counter deflecting the attack. No, he might make him go for the... He might make it a harder choice for him by playing the powerful card, the 3 hits one. Hoping that's not a mistake. He doesn't really have any good choices here. The ace crew, unsurprisingly, will respond with an in my sights, and they will cash in the ace pilot to turn it... Sorry, the ace counter to turn it into a spoiled attack. What that does mean, however, is the German is completely at liberty to play a tight turn card, knowing that, you know, his attack was wasted anyway, so he'll discard the other tight turn as well. He doesn't take any damage, the bomber doesn't take any further damage, but the ace crew has basically run out of extra lives, if I can call them that. And so he gets to replenish his hand. Good on the defense, not so good on everything else, but he may want those cards if the US fighters start picking on him. So we get to the end of that turn. The US fighters are now down to 7 fuel points, and the Messerschmitt is down to 4. And now we enter turn 5 of the homebound turns. And there is a development, because on this turn, the last group of Luftwaffe fighters will turn up. An element of Focke-Wulf 190s. Very bad news for the United States forces in the area. So, I'm just going to draw a card to see when these reinforcements turn up. It's blue bordered, so they're going to turn up within the confines of the turn. They don't turn up after everyone has had their go. And this is a mix of both good and bad, really. So, some Focke-Wulfs join the party. And they will get the next token in the initiative order. Not sure I like that. The Germans have a bit of a 1-2 punch option against us now. Don't like the look of this at all. They are also at high altitude. And of course they turn up with their drop tanks. Now there may be an opportunity here for the US to try and pair one of them off before they become a serious threat. In fact, it might be a very good idea. So whose hand is this? Oh yes, Messerschmitt. And there's another hand of cards for the new arrivals. So over to the US, I think really the best option here is that 109 on his own is far less of a threat, I would venture to say, than the new arrivals. So it's probably best if the P-47s try and chop down a Focke-Wulf. 2 would be impossible, but let's try and get 1 if we can possibly manage it. So here we go. The wingman is going to go straight for the Focke-Wulf leader. He draws his mini hand. That's not too bad. Let's see what he can provoke with this. He plays an in my sights, 2 bursts. Unluckily for him, the German has plenty of defensive cards and decides to barrel roll it, which the American can do nothing about. So, okay, good opener, good try, but it wasn't quite what you wanted. Meanwhile, the US leader, who does not have maneuvering cards, Drat, is just going to try and out of the sun the same target. See if he can draw him into a fight or at least damage him. Unfortunately, the Focke-Wulf pilot has come prepared for this as well. He's going to react with clouds. To which the US player says, no. Or words to that effect. And the German player is out of responses, so that was a very well-placed shot by the US player. And much to its annoyance, or more accurately, I suppose, its pilot's annoyance, the brand spanking new arrival takes a little bit of damage. Not bad, fellows. In fact, quite well done, I would say. So I'll just top up the P-47 leader's hand. Oh, that's not so good. Over to the Germans. So, what is the Bf-109 going to do? I think he's going to take an easy swipe at one of the bombers with that card of his. He has no maneuvering card to play. But equally, the P-47s can't preempt him. So he's going to go in a head-on attack. The US player is going to redirect him to the relatively undamaged bomber again. And the US bombers will draw their defensive hand of 4 cards. Let's see what they can do. Now, of course, the ace crew has used up all its abilities, so They're just going to have to rely on whatever they get for this one. So the German comes boring in, opens fire, in my sights, 1 burst. And the bomber will respond with... no spoiled attacks. Okay. They're going to shoot back, in my sights, 2 bursts. The German will duck it and accept the cost of having to discard a card. He'll lose his chop throttle. So they both hit each other. The Germans inflict 1 hit on the bomber. Oh no, and the fighter ducked the bomber's counter fire. So no, it's a one-way street with that one. They've chipped some paintwork and plating off the B-17. Not very friendly. And drawing a couple of cards. Ooh, well, I have a feeling the BF-109 won't have any problems surviving the coming the rest of this engagement. What about the Focke-Wulfs now? Well, they, of course, are going to drop their drop tanks because they've turned up in the combat zone and been immediately shot at, so they don't really want to keep their drop tanks with them. I mean, looking again at how much fuel they have, they've got plenty in their internal fuel tanks. They're not going to have to worry. So they're going to jettison those because they're just a bit of trouble. And their wingman is going to draw his mini hand. And he is going to claim that he wants to go for that bomber, the middle one, the damaged one. But he's not going to play any maneuvering cards. Now again, the poor P-47 can't preempt him. So he's just going to go in for his head-on attack and hope there's not too much comeback from the bombers. So because he's successfully moved in, the Americans, of course, redirect him to the strongest bomber again. And he also gets to draw his... just need to shuffle the German deck. He gets his defensive rating added to his offensive hand against the bomber, which is not a happy thought. It's reduced by 1 because he's making a head-on attack, so it won't be quite so painful. But he has 2 offensive cards there, which is a bit nasty. So just in case the bomber does have any deflect attack cards, he is going to play the weaker attack first. In my sights, 1 burst. The bomber has... the bomber has 1 reaction. It's going to play that maneuver card. It's the only thing it's got for the spoiled attack. So thwarted on his first attack. The Focke-Wulf is now going to play the second one, and this time the bomber cannot react. So it takes 2 damage. Oh dear, the damage is piling up on that plane over there. I might have to stop redirecting all the attacks to that poor fellow soon. What about the leader? He wants to have a crack too. There's no preemption from the P-47. So he's going to use his maneuvering card to actually target that center B-17. And he's going to make a head-on attack as well. So he's played his maneuvering card. However, although he can't preempt him, the P-47 is going to try and mess with his maneuvering. So he plays a tight turn. The German's having none of this and is going to counter with the scissors. He really wants to get in there. But the P-47 scissors him right back. And to that, he has no effective response. So again, because this poor unfortunate bomber is the least damaged of the 3, the Focke-Wulf is going to find himself redirected onto that one. So once again, the poor bomber crews draw their mini hand. Ooh, that might give him something to think about. The German's going to start a bit cautiously by playing that slightly less impressive in my sights card. Now, the bomber crew actually wants to avoid damage rather than necessarily shooting the German down, so they're going to go for a bit of area spray fire. They don't hit the Focke-Wulf, but they do throw its aim off. That would do nicely. Of course, he's not done with them yet. He then follows up with an in my sights cockpit hit. Not good. But they're going to retaliate with an out of the sun. That's bad news for the leader because he did not see that coming. And the only card he has in hand is a barrel roll. So his satisfaction at hitting the aircraft's cockpit, doing 1 point of damage and then knocking them out of formation. The very unsatisfactory trade-off for that, of course, is that his aircraft has now taken a total of 6 damage and is very much on its weaker side. So let's just find the appropriate counter. And there we go. So despite all the aerial reinforcements, it's actually not looking that good for the Germans. Oh no, he only gets 1 card now because of the damage, so his hand is looking decidedly unimpressive. And that ends that turn. We're getting close. The coast is in sight, so the Germans don't have much time left with which to inflict more damage on their enemies. And also their ability to do so has been quite heavily compromised. Loss of 1 fighter and damage to another. It's not looking good. Of course, things are desperate for the US side too, because they are down to 2 fuel points. The Germans, for their part, the Bf 109 is down to a single fuel point and the 190s are down to 9, but that's fairly comfortable. And there's only 3 full game turns left. And they have had a minor triumph with one of the bombers falling out of formation, so it's not looking too rosy for the United States either. Now, in the interest of not letting this video get too long, because there's quite a few steps to go by way of turns and also a mission debrief at the end, I'm going to stop this one here. I was hoping to make it back to friendly airfields on this one, but it wasn't quite to be. So until I get the next one completed and up, as always, I just want to thank you all for following the series. I hope you've been enjoying it. I certainly have been enjoying playing this one through. Massive hello, as always, to my Down in Flames veterans, and to any newcomers, very, very warm welcome to my channel. If it's Down in Flames that has brought you here, please have a look at some of the other videos I've done for this wonderful game system. And if it's wargaming in general, then please have a wander around. I hope you find other things on the channel that you like. But whoever you are and whatever's brought you here and wherever you're watching from, I really, really appreciate your company. It makes this such a fun process. I really love the comments and the banter and the other stuff, the conversations we get going. That is always part of the pleasure for me. And yeah. So on that very happy note, thank you so much for tuning in, and I shall see you in the next installment. Take care. Bye.